3 grandparents, and they were terrible, all of them. My father's dad died before I was born, and his mother, Kay, was called Queenie, and she had these big satchels under her eyes and a constantly kind of turned down mouth. And she smoked Pall Mall unfiltered, and so mostly what I remember is just spitting a little tobacco all the time. And she didn't really, like, my dad would kind of jab her a little bit, and he and I would take our shirts off, and put your shirt on, John. And she wouldn't call me Leather. She called me John, or John. She thought that was idiotic. And anybody named Leather would probably maybe retarded a little bit. She was very kind of an aspiring and thought, I think, that she occupied a higher station than she did. Her husband, my grandfather, would place a bet every day for Queenie and her neighbor Ida on the horses. And one day, someone brought my grandmother Queenie some eggplant. So she leans over the fence and says, "Ida, what do you think about eggplant?" And Ida said, "What race is he in?" But she died when I was pretty young, and mostly I remember that. I remember her in the abstract. My mother's parents were both alive, and they were buttoned up, liver spotty, and my grandfather wore short sleeve Oxfords, which I don't care for. And they also insisted that I call them grandmother and grandfather, which I found formal and stilted. And they never gave good presents. Mostly, my grandmother did 2 things that were remarkable to me. One was she died, which really isn't remarkable, but I remember her in her casket so vividly, like aglow, shiny with makeup and formaldehyde and wax and this sort of crushed velvet dress, and I felt like I could smell it. And that was the first person I'd ever seen in a casket, and I hope the last, and it was awful, and I remember it vividly. However, one time when she came to visit us, and she was staying down the stairs from my room, I went down there with our goat, Charlie, because I thought that she would want to meet Charlie. But I also thought that that might upset her a little bit, and it didn't. In fact, my grandmother invited Charlie and me into the bed with her. So that was really the only cool thing that she ever did. So then I've got Queenie, the Pall Mall tobacco spitter, grandmother Judy, the crushed velvet corpse-like goat sleeper, and then my grandfather on my mother's side, Fred Judy, who cultivated irises, was a physician, told poems, and did this awful whistling like this. He'd go, and then he'd tell stories in Old English. Just not fun, you know. You don't recognize him, and you're like, I'm related. I'm adopted. It was not fun. And when you're a kid, you would like somebody who's like, let's go fishing, and we didn't do that. He did come down from Spokane for holidays, and when I was about 8 or 9, he came down for Thanksgiving. I'm a cook, and I've liked cooking for a long time, for my whole life. And that Thanksgiving, I made my first apple pie, and I was really proud and very excited. And I, sort of carried it eagerly to the table, and everyone ate it and said the right thing, which was, "That's delicious. I can't believe it's so flaky and lovely. And what's your secret?" And my mom said, "Well, Dad, what do you think?" "I've had better." Anyway, that turned me against him. When I was 17, a friend of mine cut my hand with a chainsaw, which will be the next story. And I had a bunch of stitches in my hand. And that summer, there was a office party softball game that I participated in. And at 17, you're chuffy and stupid and athletic and devil may care. And so I said, well, yeah, I have stitches, but let's play ball. And I was crushing it, and I was out there running and throwing the ball and doing it. Probably not, but I recall that I was crushing it. And then there was a play in which I was involved where my hand that had the stitches in it got hit, and the wound opened up and was bleeding badly. But I was, 2 outs, bottom of the ninth. No way. I'm going to be in this game. So I put my hand bleeding into the ice bucket, thinking, well, this is going to freeze the blood and make it stop. And I'll have just enough time to run up to the plate and save the day. So here I am, icing my hand, getting ready to go up, and I get the call. So I'm up to the bat, and I'm up there, and I'm raring and cold and bleeding a little bit. And then I looked down the first base. I didn't point, like I wasn't going to hit it over here. I looked down the first baseline, and there was my grandfather. So I'm up to bat. First pitch, no, I didn't like it. But the next one comes, and I'm like, getting wiggling up there, it's kind of on the back, and it comes, and I missed it. I missed the ball, but I did throw the bat because my hand was kind of wet. I don't know if I mentioned that, and the bat spinning through the air down the first baseline towards my grandfather, who at the time had a kind of a heavy-set caretaker. I don't remember her name, but she was jolly. And at the last minute, she put her forearm up into the air. And the bat hit her right on the forearm, missed my grandfather, and broke her arm. It might have done worse if she wasn't jolly. So they went to the hospital, and we won, I think. And I went off to college, and then my grandfather died. And I went into Denver to stay with a friend of mine so I could get the next plane early in the morning. And that night, whether it was actively or passively in my mind, it was certainly active. I drank a great deal and missed my alarm and subsequently my flight. And I know I upset my parents, and at the time I didn't feel like, I didn't like that guy anyways. Suck it, that's the last indignity. But as I get older, and I think as we all do, and as I sort of find myself in the hierarchy of family, as I've sort of been replaced as a child and have become a father, I realize that despite the Manischewitz wine and the stupid poems and the short sleeve shirts, I've got him in me, and we can't pick him. But we can celebrate them, and we can weave the thread and kind of remember that there's a lot of people and a lot of things in all of us. And some are good and some are bad. But let's hope they're good, and I want to be a long sleeve shirt wearing, fishing, good grandfather.